What's going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in to the Colby Health and Wellness Podcast. This is part of my effort to give you a zero cost to consumer platform so you can finally understand the pieces of your health and do the thing that is best for you. Hey, today we're talking about herpes. Are you someone that has herpes? Do you maybe know someone that has herpes? Do you have a significant other that might have herpes and you are concerned about, can I get this virus? Does this virus affect me? What's going on with it? What do I expect to look for? What can I do to help myself, with this virus if you have it, or help a partner if you have a partner with it, or maybe you are just concerned about, getting out there dating and you're worried about, a virus such as this, right? So today we're going to talk about a lot of these things. We're going to talk about the physiology of the virus, how it works in the body, what it does, and what you can expect to look for, as well as some really interesting and valuable pieces as far as if you have the virus, how do you keep it at bay? And one thing we need to understand before I get into this heavier is we need to understand what a virus is. Now, a virus is something that requires to live in the body in order to be able to stay alive. This could be something like the coronavirus, which is one we are all painfully aware of. It could be the herpes virus, or you could have something like human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, which then can progress into AIDS, but that is not today's topic of conversation. So herpes virus is a virus, and that is something that stays with you for life, right? So this is a virus. This means that this is something that can have the possibility to come back, and for lack of a better term, it can come back and bite you in the ass. This could be something that you could have at bay for 10 years, and all of a sudden you have a nasty illness, a nasty disease, your immunity is shot, and it comes back and it makes itself known again. You can also be someone that has it and you haven't had an outbreak in 30 years and you don't even know you have it. There are actually a lot of people that don't even know that they have this virus and have the virus. How scary is that? There's a lot of people out there that don't care to get tested. They don't care to know what their blood work is like. And they don't, they might not know that it's in their body. It's crazy. For some people, this affects them very, very little. And for some people, it is a huge, huge effector and part of their life. Now, there's two main types of the herpes virus. There's herpes 1, or also known as HSV1. And HSV just stands for herpes simplex virus 1. And there's the 1, and then there's also herpes 2, HSV2, herpes simplex 2, right? And so I'm going to use those terms a little bit interchangeably today with HSV, herpes, and 1 and 2 and all that stuff, right? So let's get into it. We're going to talk about herpes 1 first. Herpes 1, or also known as the oral herpes or mouth herpes, is the one that you get on your mouth, right? And this is typically comes out, it could look like canker sores, it can look like a lesion around the mouth, it looks like a crusty papular lesion that develops over time around the mouth. It can be very painful for a lot of people, absolutely. And this is actually a virus that roughly 90% of the population has. It's crazy to think about. It's so many people have HSV or HSV1 and they don't know that they have it. It's something that people might have an initial outbreak of when they have it, and they might say, I don't even know what this is, and they're not worried about it at all after that. And like, really, that's the extent of it for them, right? People who are not like super cued in on health and what things look like and what these symptoms might look like, they don't know and they don't care. It's not a big deal for them. These people just living their lives, and that's totally fine. But it is important for people to understand and know these appear like, for majority of people, they are painful, number one. They're painful in nature. And they appear almost like a raised area that is swollen and red with a small pus-filled pocket, much like a pimple or a zit. However, usually it is clear fluid in these. It can be other colors. Eventually, it will pop open by itself, and it will ooze. And once it oozes out, it then crusts over. And once it crusts over, it then eventually slowly will dissipate. And then you have nothing and it goes away. Now, during that whole process of an outbreak happening, I just explained what an outbreak was. During that whole process of that outbreak happening, there are various levels of transmission. Obviously, the more direct contact you have with an open lesion, obviously the higher your chances are. But it's really it depends who you ask and how they classify these different stages and levels as to what exactly your transmission rate is between all of these. It's highly subjective. I would say, just for reference, if you have one, don't do anything sexual. And the thing is like HSV1 or herpes 1 mouth herpes, it's not even classified by most places as a sexually transmitted disease, because I know people, I have a friend, he got it, he was in the army, and he was in the barracks, and he drank off of a beer can of a buddy, and he got herpes. I had a friend, she was smoking marijuana off of a friend, and she got herpes. This happens to a lot of people. I had a friend in I think it was in 5th grade, and the guy, ate the lunchbox of another guy with a spoon, right? And he's like, "Oh, you gotta try this." He's like, "Oh yeah, I'll try it." And he got herpes, right? And so this is not necessarily something that's always transmitted sexually. This can be transmitted a lot of different ways, and usually this isn't a significant issue. Fun fact, there are actually doctors out there that have openly said, they're like, look, I don't even want to test people for HSV1 because it's so common, so many people have it, and oftentimes telling someone they have it is more detrimental to their health than the actual virus is. Think about that. A doctor doesn't want to test people for this condition because so many people have it, and the stigma around this virus is worse than the actual virus. It's crazy. It's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate world we live in, but that is the reality of the world. And people stigmatize us and say, "Oh my gosh, you have herpes, you have herpes." Easy. For most people, this is not going to create a significant issue in your life at all. The only time that herpes can really become a problem for anyone, number one, is cosmetically. Usually people have an initial outbreak, and then I want to say it's anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks after the initial infection happens. You have the latency, the virus builds up, and you say, oh, the virus builds up, it has a massive viral load here. You have an outbreak, the body develops those antibodies to the virus then, and the virus is trying to lesion or spread, and the antibodies eventually kick up, and it says, oh, well, we got antibodies to figure out how to kill this. And then eventually it goes back into remission. But when it goes back into remission, you have it for life. It goes back, it actually hides in what's called the dorsal root ganglion. It's very interesting. The dorsal root ganglion is this cluster of nerve cells at the base of the nerve root, right along the spinal column. And so it resides in that DRG if it's anywhere in the spinal column. If it's like, say, around your mouth or something like that, it will hide in the 5th cranial nerve. And so people can get, pretty nasty symptoms from it and actually break out. Yeah, it will break out roughly right along where my scroggy beard goes up right there. For those of you listening that do not have the visual aspect of this, essentially wherever you would imagine a man's beard line is going to be on the top, that's roughly where you would see a chain of small crust-like lesions going up the face and up to the ear around there. That's where you can get those breakouts and those lesions happen. And so really the only time this can be a problem for anyone, a significant serious problem, is if you develop some sort of like immunocompromise, if you have HIV, if you have a transplant, if you have an organ transplant and you have drugs that you are on to suppress your immune system so your body still recognizes and allows that organ to be a part of your body, that may become a different issue too. Just think about any time that your immune system function significantly suffers, and that can be when you can expect to have an outbreak. And that's usually when people have an outbreak, is when they have a reduction in their immune system. So think about when you're very, very stressed. Think about when you're very sick. For women, actually, interestingly enough, this can happen. It's possible this can happen when you are close to your cycle or a very certain point in your cycle. For a lot of women, they can't experience an outbreak at that point in time. So it's not like it's something that needs to be feared or concerned, or you have to live and worry with this virus. It's not necessarily that way. It's quite common, to be honest with you. And it's not a significant issue or a significant barrier even to your sexual life at all either. I would say for the most part, for most people, really what it comes down to is just making sure that you're healthy. Making sure that you're healthy every day and being as healthy as you possibly can be. And making sure that you have the best immune system markers that you can possibly have. Right? I'm not saying you have to go out and get super comprehensive blood work. I mean, if you want to, be my guest. But it's not like that's necessarily the thing that you have to do. I'm talking about the obvious things. Eat a good balanced diet. Sleep as much as you possibly can. Ideally something like 8 hours a day. Lift weights, do cardio, run, lift weights 3 times a week and do cardio 3 times a week. Like being a healthy individual overall and trying to live as low a stress life as possible is really one of the best things you can do for this virus. And any virus for that matter. Any virus, these things live inside of your body, right? These things live inside of your body for life. They are in you until the day that you die. And so it's really just a question of how do we live with this and how do we mitigate these outbreaks as opposed to trying to rid your body of the virus. I mean, we currently don't have anything. There is good news though, actually. We'll share that at the end. But that's about it for HSV1. And HSV1, like I said, is around the mouth. Now, HSV2 is a little bit different beast. HSV2 is located on the genitals, usually. I said usually, because you can have HSV2 on the mouth and you can have HSV1 on the genitals. It can occur in either location. It really just depends on the mode of transmission. If someone might have, say, oral mouth herpes or HSV1, and they, give someone oral sex, you receive oral sex, you can transmit it to the genitals. It is possible, absolutely. So you need to simply make sure that you are aware of that. And really the only way to tell between the two is a blood test. You would simply need a blood test to differentiate between the two. As far as HSV2 though, HSV2 is a little bit different beast. Most of the studies say it is slightly more transmissible without symptoms present. HSV1, it's possible to transmit without symptoms, although it's rare. And HSV2, it's possible just a little bit more to transmit it without symptoms present. Take that as you will. And feel free to, conduct your own research as well, because the research is honestly all over the damn place with it. And there's a lot of question as to how are these people performing these studies and to what, level are they determining what is a transmissible load to somebody else. There's a lot of different factors there that unfortunately are not accounted for in a lot of these studies. But, the point is, and the point remains, that it is possible to contract this virus without symptoms present, although it is very rare. And it is possible to contract both that way. It's also possible to be in a healthy relationship, have a bunch of great sex, and never transmit the virus. Think about that. Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think about the good things that can happen? You may never get this virus. You may have it. I don't know. I think you should get a blood test to be sure. But that's my point. So, HSV2. HSV2, like I said, is most of the time on the genitals. The only time that this can really create a problem for somebody is obviously, number one, when you're having an outbreak, right? You don't want to you want to refrain from sexual activity when you're having an outbreak. And even when you are not having an outbreak, it is recommended that you use protection. I will say the only time that it would concern me if someone has HSV2 and it should just be brought up to your doctor is if someone has HSV2 or HSV1 on the genitals and you're a female that's pregnant. Now I am worried about a couple things. And one of the biggest ones being transmission to the baby. It does not happen all the time. It happens actually quite rarely. However, it is possible with an active outbreak to transmit that virus to the baby, and that could be a significant issue. This can cause what is called neonatal encephalitis. Now, if you think about this, the baby does not have an immune system at first. It has no goddamn idea what's going on. It is coming into a new world with all kinds of new pathogens and viruses, and that being one of them. So, the baby's body says, I don't recognize what this is. The baby's body also does not have the ability to produce a ton of antibodies yet. And so, this virus attacks the baby and it it spreads rapidly throughout the body. Now, normally, you and I, healthy adults, we might get, say oral herpes. Let's say we have oral herpes. Now, it is not going to spread to the rest of our body looking like chicken pox. It's not going to do that because our body has a way to fight this infection. It has a way to fight this virus. And so our body produces these antibodies and all these different ways of our immune system to function and kill this virus and keep it at bay, right? The baby does not have that, unfortunately. The baby has nothing. And so what happens is you might see some babies and they have these terrible crusty lesions all over their body seemingly. Some of them have them just spread to the chest, some to the back. It all varies. But that would be nasty case of herpes simplex. It's one or two. I don't know. It depends on the blood test. But the encephalitis part is what's kind of scary. Because if it travels to the brain and it gets inside of the brain, then you experience inflammation and swelling of the brain. It's the immune system response, right? The body's trying to figure out how to fight this damn thing. And you get encephalitis, which means inflammation of the brain tissue. This can be very bad for a baby. And neonatal meaning within the first 28 days of life outside the womb. So it is possible to get, worst case, neonatal encephalitis, which is inflammation or swelling of the brain because the herpes virus is in the brain. That's about as bad as that virus gets. That's it. Other than that, for the most part, you're probably not going to die from this virus. So, excuse me. What I would say and what I would caution people to do is this. If you are someone that has this virus, what can you do to keep it at bay? Well, if you're a mother and you're, having a baby soon or something like that, number one, you need to make it known to your OB-GYN. And number two, what I would recommend you do. Obviously, I'm not your doctor. I can't provide medical advice to you. But usually what the standard protocol is and standard procedure is for mothers to begin taking their antiviral drugs, which we'll get more to in a second. They're going to start taking their antiviral drugs roughly 10 to 14 days before they suspect that the baby is going to be born. Excuse me. And at that point, it is going to significantly curb the potential for the virus to have any, lesions that are potentially going to hurt the baby, right? And so it significantly reduces that chance. And if there's any real concern at all, if there are lesions present, they just do a C-section. That's it. That's all it is, right? And so they're just born via C-section, which might have happened anyway. And some moms just want to have a C-section anyway. They don't want to have the potential trauma of a birth canal, of a vaginal canal birth, and that's their decision, right? And so usually worst case scenario, C-section that puppy out, you're good to go. It's not really that big of a deal. I think the biggest problem with this virus is the stigma that is with the virus. I mean, really, that's it. I hate to tell you, but that's seriously it, man. So, what can you do to keep this virus at bay, right? And there's a couple things you can do. Like I said, obviously, I hit the big hitters, right? The heavy hitters. Eat quality food. Stay hydrated. Get good sleep. Do your cardio. And work out. like resistance train. Like, yes, even if you're a girl, I promise you, you will not get too big. Resistance train. As long as you do these things, and as long as you try to live a healthy lifestyle, people can go sometimes their entire life without an outbreak. I will say though, people who initially get the outbreak, let's say I'm 20 years old and I contract this virus, right? Well, I'm a healthy young male. I do my workouts, I eat right, yada yada, etc., etc. If I have this virus, my body may have one or two breakouts, possible, later on down the line, but it's unlikely that I am going to have a significant issue and a hindrance to my sex life. That's the reality of it. And that's really what people are worried about is they want to make sure they can still have good sex, right? That's pretty much what people are always worried about, and they get, they just get their panties in a wad over this virus, and they're like, am I going to have a good sex life? Yeah, you relax, bro. You're going to be fine. Usually what happens when someone contracts this virus, let's say at any time, if as long as you have an intact immune system, your body learns how to fight this, right? It develops these antibodies to this virus. And what happens is that virus eventually just recedes back into the nerve root, right? And like I said, for the mouth, it's the trigeminal nerve, usually. And the genitals, it resides back into that sacral plexus DRG, maybe even the lumbar DRG. It really depends on what dermatome you caught it, etc., etc. But my point is, resides back into that nerve root, right? And so it stays in there because it is moist and it is dark and it can hide there, right? And so what happens is every time, and it's always essentially trying to send out little bits, and it's always trying to come out, but then the body has these antibodies that come back and they take it and they destroy it, right? And they kill it, they lyse it. And so that's normally how it should work. Your body is always fighting infections and viruses every day. So normally that's what happens. Now, let's say, obviously, someone has a weakened immune system, and that's really the only time it comes out. So, my point in saying all this is you're trying to figure out how to make sure it stays at bay. Number one, the longer you have the virus, the better off your body is at producing antibodies for it. It's going to get really good really fast, and then it's going to keep them up, and it's going to keep them hiked up. In some cases, the studies reveal that the body holds almost like a heightened sense of immune system even during times of rest because it actively has the virus in the body, right? And so it is the immune system is always a little bit heightened. They actually theorize that this might have helped people in times of plagues and things like that because these immune factors were always just slightly heightened. So in the course of history, it could have helped us. We don't really know. But getting back to it with you guys, what can you do for it, right? So there's a couple. We're going to get down to the nitty gritty details of it here. Number one, antivirals. Unfortunately, we don't have a shot. I'll talk more about it later. We don't have a shot currently. They're working on one, but we don't have one. Right now, you can take these things called antiviral drugs. Now, an antiviral drug, viral virus pertaining to the virus, an anti meaning it's going to kill it, right? So it's going to help the body in certain ways delete these copies of these cells in which the virus hides in, right? And so it essentially stops this cell replication in a way, right? So you need to make sure that you would be taking this drug consistently and you would be taking this antiviral. Maybe it is valcyclovir, maybe it is acyclovir. There are different reasons for prescribing slightly different drugs, but that's a question for your physician, really. So making sure you're on a decent antiviral drug. This can be something that is taken over a long period of time, but typically people take this as something that they take like as soon as they get an outbreak, or women if they are worried about, they like routinely have an outbreak at a certain time of the month or something like that. Yeah, they know, okay, this is the day that I need to start these antiviral drugs, and they typically don't have an issue. So this can help the virus go back into remission something like 3 days sooner. I mean, out of the course of like a 5-day outbreak, 3 days sooner is a pretty big improvement, right? So having something like that can be a significant help. I will say, be careful. The long-term consequences of not allowing your nervous system to replicate in the way that it needs to could yield bad effects. I'm not here saying that I am a pharmacist, but I'm just out here theorizing that could not be great if you were to take it every day for years and years and years. Just like most medications out there, if you were to take them for a long time of years and years and years, they could probably yield some detrimental side effects. Just keep that in mind. But I'm not a doctor, and I'm definitely not your doctor. I'm only a student. So, getting back to it, what can you take naturally? Naturally, this is a very interesting conversation. There is an amino acid, which is just the base building block of protein, right? And so it is a type of a protein. It is an amino acid. It's called lysine. Lysine at 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams per day can yield positive effects in terms of inhibiting viral replication. And if you think about that, viral replication is exactly what herpes simplex virus does, both 1 and 2. So, making sure that you're able to actively inhibit a viral replication would be very advantageous for someone who has this condition and has herpes, right? So, getting a quality lysine supplement, which, to the best of my knowledge, an amino acid, which is basically a protein, is not going to do anything massively negative for your body. It can have other benefits, I'm sure, and there are other reasons why people would take lysine. However, I would say if you have the herpes virus and if you are relatively concerned about it or anything like that, I would be hopping on lysine like a mofo right now. I would be going out and I would be buying all the lysine that I could. So that would be a great idea. As far as the shot that I said, oh, we'll talk about this later, I talked about a couple times, there is a cure in the works. Now, we don't know exactly, I believe it's for HSD1. I believe they're working on herpes simplex 1 and 2. They function in just a little bit different way. And they have a little bit different markers, so they're figuring it out. They're working on it. But viruses are really tough to figure out. Viruses stay in the body forever, like I said. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out how to get you something that completely destroys this virus in something like over the course of, we don't really know the time right now. I believe it's over the course of a year, or maybe it's even a month. The research hasn't come out on it yet, and it's still in clinical testing, right? It's still in, like very, very early phase drug trials. So there could be something, they're theorizing it's something like a couple years away still. So if you're someone, or you know someone that has this virus, number one, I wouldn't be too worried about it right now, but on the upside, there is hope, because there is a cure coming. We don't exactly know when it's coming, but it is coming at some point. And I would say, just like every cure out there, be cautious, because we figured it out with some very sensitive subjects, that some of the more recent vaccines actually can cause things like myocarditis, which is a very bad side effect of some of the drugs. But I'm not here to comment on vaccines. All I'm here to tell you is they are making a cure for HSV1 and HSV2 as we speak. So it's good. It's good. I mean, it's looking on the up and up. I mean, that's good. That's very good, right? So overall, what can you do to get rid of this virus? No, you can't get rid of it, but you can significantly mitigate it. You will severely hurt this virus's ability to replicate in your body by simply having a strong immune system and taking either an antiviral every day or taking lysine, right? I would take a lysine supplement. I would do your research, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you exactly what to take, but I would look a little bit more into the research on lysine and see exactly what the dose would be for your body and what you think might be advantageous to help you with this condition. So that's about all I've got for the herpes virus family of viruses. It's not something you need to significantly be worried about, and it's not even something that's going to significantly affect your life if you don't let it. So don't stress too much. We're only here once. Take a big, deep breath and just try not to worry about it. People will figure it out. You'll figure it out. And as people have this longer, they will figure out how to deal with it better and better and better. That is it for today, guys. I love you so much. If you are interested in any sort of coaching, I am a hormone specialist and a coach that deals with lifestyle changes. This would be one of them. This would be great. I primarily help people lose weight, and in specific, females lose weight. I will take on clients of almost any, I will take on any type of client. Of course I will. But that's typically what I deal with, and that is my specialty, is women who have endocrine function issues and also women trying to lose weight. If you guys are interested, or if you guys are interested in the coaching or any of the other social media, I will link it down below and you can choose whatever you want to. Guys, I love you so much. Take care, have a great day, and stay safe.